I was asked to speak at another event that was largely Hispanic, young 12-year-old girls. And like I said, for me, I didn't know anybody who was an architect, much less did I know that women could be architects. The Brady Bunch, it was the dad. It wasn't the mom that was the architect. The mom didn't work, but I just love for these young girls to be able to see, oh, I could be like her. They can see themselves in me and say, oh, and whether it's architecture or engineering or whatever it is, just knowing that there is no stereotype anymore. A lot of times in junior high, girls will start changing and thinking, oh, that's a boy job. I used to want to be this in elementary school, but I found out it's a boy job and now I want to do something else. And so really just trying to show them that you can be whatever, whether you're boy or girl or, whatever color you are, it doesn't matter.
All right, everybody. Hey, thank you so much for the support of these videos. They have been absolutely amazing. The design community, the support, the outreach. It has been so much fun to do these. And today we are lucky enough to have Jeannie Bertolaccini of ordiz-melby Architects, founded in 1993, an award-winning architecture firm serving build-to-own clients throughout the southern San Joaquin Valley of California. Jeannie, thanks so much for taking the time today. Really great to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Zach.
Absolutely. Do you mind if we just jump in and can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Okay, I'm from Bakersfield, California, born and raised, went to school, technical school in Phoenix, Arizona for architecture. Spent about 10 years there working in food service design and then decided to have a family back here in Bakersfield, be near family, and then working for an architect and then the county and did some land surveying type work and then started working at ordiz-melby in 2007.
2007, and you've been there since then?
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I know you and I talked a little bit off camera about this. Was there a particular moment where you thought about, like, I want to be an architect, or, that kind of idea had come to you? Or maybe some people I've talked to said they knew the exact moment they were like, I'm going to be an architect, right? Anything like that for you?
Well, so my story is a little funny. I think I knew I wanted to be an architect when I was younger. I just didn't know what that was, but always played with design. I mean, even when I was playing with Barbies, I used to design my own Barbie house with things around the house. But in sixth grade, was a big Brady Bunch fan. It came on like 3 times a day, and I watched it all 3 times. But the dad was an architect, and I used to see Greg carrying around the orange tube, and I'm not sure what it was about the drafting table. But so when I started junior high, I found out that my junior high offered a drafting class, and I inquired about it. And they said, "Oh, that's what architects do." And so I'm like, "That's what I want to do." So I was the only girl in my 7th and 8th grade drafting class, and then went to high school and continued with drafting all through high school. So it's kind of like the only thing I ever wanted to be that I knew it had a name. I didn't know anybody. There was nobody around me to give me an example of what that was, but yeah, I just kind of grabbed onto it from the Brady Bunch.
See, that's awesome. That's, I would say the most common story I'm hearing so far is that someone got into it because of a parent or a family member, or, kind of somebody was in the design world and kind of showed them the way. But it's great and refreshing to hear sometimes. It's just like, look, this is what I decided I wanted to do. And I know for you, it was not an easy path, right? It was a very, very long and arduous path. Can you talk kind of a little bit more about that and what your path was to becoming an architect?
So I went to a technical school, so I got an associate's degree, and then I started working while I was in school and after, and always with the mindset that I would eventually go back to school and get a bachelor's degree. And then it just never happened because I didn't live in a city that had a university that had an accredited architectural program. Came back to Bakersfield, and by the time I got married, I knew that wasn't going to be an option, but luckily found out that in California, you don't have to have a bachelor's to get an architect's license. So I always say that's doing it the hard way. So I did it the hard way, which means you have to have enough years of experience under a licensed architect, and then you can begin the exam process. And I will say that without a degree, that exam process is not as easy as it would have been, I'm sure, if I had a degree. So, I took exams for a long, long time, and somewhere around 13 or 14 years was the time from my first exam to licensure. And it was a rough 13 years. I was married and a mom of 3 when I finally got my license. So it was, that same kind of like, should I study or spend time with the family, that kind of thing. But I would take a couple exams and then I wouldn't take any for a while. And then I'd get back into it. But once they started the rolling clock, that really kind of put me into a crunch time. And I would, some of my tests expired. At one time, 5 exams just went off my record that I had passed. And so it was, I really had to question for me. I kept thinking, is this for me? When those 5 exams got expired, like I cried and I thought, maybe I can still do this. There's plenty of people that don't get their license and still enjoy a career in the architectural field. I thought I can still do what I'm doing. I just can't call myself an architect. And then I realized, what am I thinking? This is my dream. You know what I mean? It's there's no time frame. It's whenever I get it, Right. And so at that point, I sort of changed everything that I was doing and went at it. And I think in about 12 or 14 months, I got them all passed. And I never failed again, actually, when I changed my mindset. So it just, and I tell you, this is what I tell young people all the time. It feels so good to say you're an architect. I love when people ask me, what do you do? And I get to say, it's 3 words now. I'm an architect. You know what I mean? I don't have to explain, because it seemed like if I said, well, I do architectural work, and then they'd ask, oh, you're an architect. No, I'm not an architect. You always have to explain things. But now it's just a really neat conversation, because I'm surprised how many people have never met an architect, or, you see it on TV and you're like, oh, yeah, I've never met an architect before. So people are really interested. So I love that. Right. So I say, go for it. And no matter how old you are, get your license.
I absolutely love that. It is, it's a story of perseverance, and it's the hard way, right? It is the gritty way. It's grinding out. So, okay. So on the timeline, so it took like 13, 14 years. When did you finally pass your last exam and become a licensed architect?
So obviously here in California, once you pass all the AREs, then you still have that California supplemental exam. It used to be an oral interview, and that went away a number of years ago. I got my license in 2016. Okay. So, like I said, a little late in life, but I got through my AREs and started studying for the CSE. And I told myself I never want to study again. So I studied like you would not believe, because I wanted to take that CSE exam one time. There was no failing for me. I didn't give myself that option. And like I said, I'm happy to say I passed it on the first time, and it just was amazing.
Oh man. Okay. So finished in 2016, and then we were talking a little bit about this. So now, and you became a principal of your firm in 2018? Yeah.
So things changed really quick for me. I kept thinking, I'll get my license someday. And then I started hearing things in the firm about possibilities of a transition happening, and that could only happen for me if I were licensed. And so that really kind of kicked me into gear. And I knew having a license would open a lot of doors for me, whether I wanted to teach, or there's so many things you can do once you become an architect. And so I just thought, I'll get it and then I'll figure it out. But things in my firm anyway, I got my license just at the right time. We had started a leadership training classes about 6 years ago, and it was kind of sort of open to anybody who had about 20 years left in their career and wanted, an opportunity at leadership. And so our 2 firm principals at the time put together like classes, training classes of different things, talking about marketing, trends, staffing, just sort of getting you exposed to things that we don't normally do day to day, which is project designs. It really didn't have anything to do with projects. It was all about running a business. And then out of that process, I think that was like a 2-year process. And then there were 4 people then who continued after that. But during that time is when I got my license, and it just feels like everything changed. And I think, for anybody, get your license and there's so many opportunities for you once you have your license. I personally happened to be in a firm that was looking to transition. So I feel like I was really lucky that I was in that situation. And we're still going through the transition. We've got a process that we're doing, but I've been a principal now for 2.5 years, and I'm deep in it, doing billing and getting new projects and working with staffing and make sure that everybody has work to do. And luckily I get to do all this during this pandemic, right?
Right.
But, our office is all remote right now, so it's been a little bit crazy. But yeah, and then our founding member, Bill Melby, he just retired in December, so he was the first big wave of the transition, and we brought in a new principal. So he's kind of training now. So there's 3 of us, and the other founding member, Danny Ordiz, he'll be retiring in 4 years. So we really kind of got lucky age-wise that there's this nice little ladder happening.
Right. You're right. Lucky is the right term, because I know we deal with this on a regular basis. I do risk management for architects and engineers outside of the foundation. And there is a huge issue right now going on with transferring firms, right? With ownership transference. It's hard. It's hard for firm owners, as they're kind of looking to make that transition. It sounded like the owners of your firm, I mean, they put a leadership program in place many years before they were ready, right? That's a really cool idea. Like that's kind of something that's come from these conversations, this interview series of the foundation, is we really just get into leadership, right? And what it looks like to be a leader at a firm, to be an owner, to be, in charge of folks, but also what does it take to get there, right? That's one of the things I love so much about your story, is that it wasn't your typical, I went and did my bachelor's, I went and did a 2-year graduate program, I worked somewhere for 5 years, I started my own firm. That's a great story. That is an amazing story, but it's not everybody's story, right?
Yeah, I mean, the key is there isn't only one way. There's a lot of ways to do this. And, would I have started my own firm eventually? I don't know. That really wasn't a big dream of mine, getting my license. But the biggest part is that I had choices once I got my license. Right. And I kind of wondered too, sometimes the firm leaders, I thought, gosh, you could just sell it and you wouldn't have to do, because the leadership classes, we had homework and they would give assignments, and then we'd meet, in a few weeks and present our ideas. So it was a lot about making sure that you were in it. You know what I mean? It was all, separate from work. This was all evening work. And, I realized that they could have, done it easy and sold to somebody else, but they really wanted to see the firm live on. Bakersfield is a small, community, the county. And I think the same situation is true with a lot of the firms here, is all the firm owners are about the same age. They're all in their mid 60s, and either you sell or you, to some outside firm, or you decide you're done and you just close the doors, or you do this transition process. And so I do feel really lucky that Bill and Danny really wanted to see the firm continue and believed in us to give us that training. Right.
No, that's huge. That's a really strong why. Have you ever read Simon Sinek's Start With Why?
Yeah.
Great book.
Great.
Love that book.
Yeah.
Another thing that you and I had talked about a little bit before was you do some speaking, right, in the Valley, in Bakersfield there, at, I think, the high school level, or just kind of doing career sharing and things like that for younger folks who may or may not become designers. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of being able to show that this is an all-encompassing profession, right? It's not necessarily something where you need to look a certain way and be a certain person.
Right. Yeah. So it's funny. I really didn't even know that this was a passion of mine. But when I started at ordiz-melby, they participate, because we do educational work, in career days at elementary, junior high, and high schools. And so that's what first started it, is being able to share what architecture is, what we do day to day with young, middle-aged school kids, that maybe have never been exposed to that. And then it sort of started getting into, I read Sheryl Sandberg's book about, I don't know, it's called Lean In, and she's like a CEO of Facebook, and really kind of talking about women in leadership positions. So then I started kind of looking at young girls and started doing some mentoring. I mentor at a high school. I've been doing that for about 5 years with sophomore through senior girls. And then my alma mater, my East Bakersfield High School, asked me to come and talk to their drafting students. So I do that every year. I've been doing that for about 3 years. And, East Bakersfield is a large Hispanic community. Mm-hmm. And so going and showing them, look, I was just like you in this same drafting room. And now I'm a firm owner. I'm one of the owners of the largest firm in Kern County. And I'm a female. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see that often, right? But really kind of just trying to, I love sharing my story, but also bringing architecture to students. The kids in drafting obviously already know what architecture is, but actually seeing photos and somebody who's from their community and went to their school. And then also we do there's something here in town that's a career expo, and there's also a STEMposium that our firm puts a booth out, and young kids, our booth is very well attended, but we really we put on the VR goggles and show them that architecture is like really cool. It's 3D work. And I don't think a lot of kids know that. We do everything in 3D, but they think, oh, you just have to sit there and draw all day. And that's not what it is. I mean, a lot of them don't know that we go out in the field during construction, and, I wear a hard hat and steel-toed boots when I'm out there and checking on my project. So really just showing them that it isn't just drawing. And of course, not everybody gets to design, right? It's like you don't graduate from school and get to design a 3-story building or anything, but right. It's a lot of different things, and really kind of showing them what our day is like. And, most of the time I don't have 2 days that are the same. Every day's different, every project's different, every client's different. But I really love sharing that with young girls. I was asked to speak at another event that was largely Hispanic young 12-year-old girls. And like I said, for me, I didn't know anybody who was an architect, much less did I know that women could be architects. The Brady Bunch, it was the dad. It wasn't the mom that was the architect. The mom didn't work. But I just love for these young girls to be able to see, oh, I could be like her. They can see themselves in me and say, oh, and whether it's architecture or engineering or whatever it is, just knowing that there is no stereotype anymore, that you can be whatever you want.
It's a message that, if we're thinking about it in terms of planting seeds, right? If we're literally, you're talking to kids who are a decade away from becoming an architect or more, right? But you're planting a seed now. You're planting a seed of a tree that's going to take a very long time to grow. How do we plant more seeds, right? That's it. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter what your gender is. How do we plant more seeds? How do we make it look cool? How do we open up and show young kids who never thought that this was a possibility, that people that look like them or people that are willing to put in an amazing amount of work can literally do whatever they want. And if that's being a licensed architect, being a firm owner. So to be able to get in front of a group of people and say that is, that if that's all we do with this interview series, that's amazing, right? That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it takes work. And I don't even like to talk about the testing. Like when I've done career days, we talk about what we do. And it's like, oh God, now the dreaded part, there's tests involved, and that's sometimes when you lose people, but there's a reason why there's all those tests there. You're building structures that the public can enter. So it's health, safety, and welfare. So, you don't want to build something that's going to collapse and all these people, are injured. So there's a reason why there's a lot of exams. Does the pay equal the work that gets in it?
$1 million question right there. I know.
But, I always say we do it because we love it, right? It's so rewarding to start the process with somebody when you're just sketching and getting ideas, and then, seeing it done and it's real, right? Like how many other jobs can you say you're creating something that is real, that you get to see the results of what you do, and people can walk through it, and, seeing the clients light up when they've got their new office or something and you were involved from the very beginning. It's so rewarding, and that's what that's what makes me love what I do every day. Every day I love
awesome. That is, I love this. This is so inspiring. I'm just having a lot of fun with this. So let's talk a little bit about leadership there. And that's something that your firm does. This is kind of, we're trying to figure out a way to do this. And it's still in infant stages right now of creating, not just the middle school and high school kind of training. And we have some really cool stuff that goes along with that. We have a high school design competition and things like that. But I just keep coming back to, there's this kind of gap once you have finished school, once you've even become licensed, now the different type of learning starts, right? And I know that you probably know this, where as you train into ownership, right? I mean, you're learning things that they just don't teach you in school, right? It's just not part of the technical training of becoming an architect. It's a completely different skill set. And I was going to say, can you talk a little bit about that in terms of maybe what they went through with your leadership courses, or just stuff that you've learned along the way, having been a principal and come up the way you did?
Yeah, well, billing is always crazy, right? You know, you have to give a proposal for some work, and then you've got staff that's drawing, and so making sure the time spent on the project equals about what you bill for. So that's a big lesson. You know, you can only afford to lose so many times, and then you're out of business. But delegating, that's sort of what my founding principals are constantly telling me. You need to delegate more, because now I'm doing leadership stuff, but then you have to kind of pull away from the project stuff. You know, I love selecting finished materials and doing space planning, but you can't do all that and still market the firm. And, you know, when you need staff, you're looking for new staff who's out there. You know, how do you find staff? We recently moved somebody out from Louisiana out to Bakersfield. And so we were really lucky to find her. But, you know, that takes time, and there's not enough hours in the day to run the business, grow the business, and actually do the work. So the delegating part is probably the biggest thing that I'm still, you know, I'm improving every day, but you know, because it's easy to say, well, I could do it faster than showing somebody else how to do it. You know, I can do it in 30 minutes, but it might take them 8 hours. Well, they'll never learn to do it if you don't show them how to do it. So you have to let them do that 8 hours. Otherwise, you'll always be the one doing it. So you got to keep them working, and your job now is to teach. That's the other side of it. It's like, it's not just to do all these things. I've got to now grow new architects.
Being able to delegate something that would take you 30 minutes, it's going to take somebody 8 hours, right?
Yeah.
And that's such a challenge, because almost by definition, being the type of person to get to where you did, you had to learn to do stuff on your own and multitask and be just really incredibly efficient with your time, right? There's just no way around it, especially if, you know, you got family and things like that. It's kind of like teaching your kids to tie their shoes, right? When it's that time that they need to learn how to tie their shoes.
You can do it faster.
I can do it so much faster. And then you sit there and you watch them tie their shoes slowly, and you sit there patiently and wait.
Yeah, because you don't want to be tying their shoes when they're 16.
Right. Because eventually, you know, they need to know how to tie their shoes. Sometimes that mentality's missing, though. You know what I mean? Yeah. Sometimes there's just, we skip that step, right? We end up with very high achievers, but you know, there's a saying in sports that some of the best athletes don't actually make great coaches because they don't necessarily know the technical skills of how they got there. They were just amazing athletes, right? Yeah. Great coaches understand a lot of different things, and you know, there's a lot of parallels to be made between leadership and coaching. But it's that drive to get there, and then that want to turn around and help the people coming behind you, right?
Right.
I don't know how to teach that. I don't know. It's just kind of one of these innate things. You have to just kind of want to help.
Right.
But awesome. Well, hey, I'll give you just a couple more questions here. If we were going to get into kind of projects, was there a project in your mind that stands out as kind of most challenging project, or something maybe like lessons learned, or for some reason or another that it stands out in your head?
Yeah, I did a 3-story outpatient building, and really had to work through the programming phase because it was a project. It was on a hospital site. It was already tight to begin with. And so it was a really small footprint that we had to work with. So they talked about doing a 2-story. We ended up 3 stories on a small little footprint. Right. And then because it was outpatient, we had large equipment. We had nuclear medicine machines, MRI, CT scans, X-ray, all of that had to go into this 3-story building that did not fit in the elevator. So there was a lot of planning from the very beginning. And so what we ended up doing is building a removable panel that sort of looked like a window on the 3rd floor that would come out. And so during construction, we lifted the machine. They do what's called a cookie sheet, and they stick it out the window, and you slide the equipment right in. And in 10 years from now, when they're ready to replace that, it'll be the same process. Right. You can't get that down a stairwell, and you can't get it through an elevator. But that one, I learned a lot because it's medical and dealing with lead walls. But the programming phase is so important to work through, who needs to be on the 1st floor, who needs to be on the 2nd floor. Does it make sense for large equipment to be on the 3rd floor, and why? But it all depends on what the scope of the project is. You don't want the pharmacy on the 3rd floor, because then everybody for a retail pharmacy has to go up. So that took up the 1st floor. You know what I mean? So right. Small, big building, small footprint, and how are you going to get the equipment in and out? You have to start having those conversations before it's built, right? You can't wait till construction to figure out, we didn't know how we were going to get that in.
Right. Those are the most fun conversations for me to have when you look at a building that is just designed so well that everything has a reason for the way that it is. Right. It's not just purely aesthetics that it looks this way. It's literally we create it this way because we've thought, 8 steps down the line, and we know, just the pharmacy on the 1st floor versus the 3rd floor. Right. A lot of sense when you say it like that. I'm like, man, but I'm sure somewhere somebody didn't think that through. Right. And all of a sudden you have all this extra elevator traffic. And if we were going to talk about leaders in architecture that you admire, or maybe somebody that's inspired you in some way, maybe as a mentor, or even just kind of somebody you looked up to as a famous architect, were there any names that come to mind there?
Well, surprise, Zaha Hadid, because she was a very famous female and woman of color, basically. But love to see women exceeding in a men's world. You have that whole Google, famous architects, and you get all the men. So I love that story. I had lots of mentors at every job that I worked at. I'd love to just throw a few names out there, but John Kors was a big mentor, and Bob Jensen here in my office that I'm at now. But when I was younger, I had my food service design, John Ogianov, and then Bart Huffman were also really big mentors for me. But I tell you, all these young people, please, whenever you're working, don't think you're alone. Look for somebody that can teach you and that you feel comfortable asking questions, and don't be afraid to ask somebody to help you along the way, especially through the testing process. But even just learning,
Right. That's actually going to be the next interview series I'm going to do. In fact, if I'll put this out there on a different video, but I want to track down folks who are in the licensing process right now and kind of talk about going through best practices of tests, not just studying the information, but just kind of things that people do, because the testing anxiety, first of all, and then just the balancing of the schedules like you talked about. I know that keeps some people out. Right? I know that prevents certain people from achieving what they want to achieve. So I have a group that I call it the ARE Accountability Group. And it's just a group that I put together of non-licensed people here in Bakersfield that want to do the testing process, and half of them have, but I get together with them every few months, and it's really for them to stay accountable to whatever they think they're going to do. I'm like, I'm already licensed. I don't need to. I want to help them not go through what I did. And if you want to be licensed in 2 years, I want to help hold you accountable so that you will be, if that's your goal, and maybe your goal's 5 years, but trying to help them stay focused is really what it is.
areas and trying to find different ways to do that. So we just met last week and gave them some homework to put a calendar together and let's plan it out. And everybody's timeline's different. If you're a parent, you have to, make sure you give yourself that family time in between exams. Or if you're not, then boom, boom, you go right for them. But yeah, it's you got to plan it out. If you just keep saying you're going to do it, it just never happens. I have a little saying here on my board: goals are dreams with deadlines. Because I think for me, there were so many years that it was my goal, and my dream, I guess you can say, but I never put it on paper, and I didn't make a deadline for it. And then when I started realizing I had an opportunity at the firm, I put a deadline to it, and it happened. So you really have to put a deadline.
I love it. I love it. So many good little nuggets here. All right. Last question for you. What is the best advice that you would be able to give to an up and coming design professional? I
think this is a really good question, and I really hope all these young people listen up here. And I came up with a few. So first thing would be learning with intention. I feel like you can get a job and be working and doing red lines. You're just drafting and doing what you're told to do, but no one is going to make you get better, and no one's going to make you become a good architect. That's all on you. Obviously you want to have a mentor in place, but it's up to you to learn and do more than what you're asked for. And it doesn't mean you have to do faster work or something, but, learn about vendor, when you have lunch and learn opportunities, go learn about what these different materials are. What's a good roofing material? Even if you're in a position that it doesn't matter right now, there will be a time that it does. So to me, being intentional about what you're learning and what you're doing, don't just go through the motions. Communication, when I get, when we've done like career fairs, and I'll have moms that will come and, my fifth grader says she wants to be an architect. What can she do now to get there? And I always say, obviously math is good and all that, but communication, we have to, when we have our designs, we have to present those designs. We have to explain our ideas to our clients or to other people in the office. And if you're not a good communicator, nobody's going to understand what you're trying to say. You can't always use pictures to tell that story. You also need words to do that. So at any age, communication is good. Get used to standing up, talking in front of people. I know people are really afraid of that in junior high and high school. It's like that's the scariest thing, but do whatever it takes, whether it's cheer or student government or something that gets you used to doing that. And then building relationships. I didn't realize till I was older that the relationships throughout my past have really helped me today, So making relationships with other people in other firms or vendors or consultants, all those relationships are really good.
Right. Oh gosh, there's a lot to unpack there. So we're going to have to split this video up into multiples. I love it. Awesome. Well, that's a great place for us to leave it. Jeannie, thank you so much. Is there a place where folks can find you either online or your firm?
Yeah, ordiz-melby.com is our website. And then we're also on Instagram. It's ordiz-melby Architects on Facebook. And my Instagram is Jeannie B Architect.
This has been spectacular, Jeannie. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it from the foundation.
Thank you so much. And I hope this video helps at least one be inspired.
At least one, right? Just one seed. That's all we need. Awesome.